any other human being is permanently out of reach. Other people's behavior must be, in that case, completely unpredictable. And yet no human community could ever exist if we had no mechanism to enable us to feel safe in trusting other people's behavior to follow certain predictable patterns. And these predictable patterns can't arise solely from personal experience. We must know with some certainty before we have observed another member of the community for any length of time what he or she is likely to do in most situations. There are two kinds of stories that not only give us the illusion of understanding other people's behavior, but also go a long way toward making that illusion true. Each community has its own epic, a complex of stories about what it means to be a member of that community. These stories can arise from shared experience. Have you ever heard two Catholics reminisce about catechism or being taught in Catholic school by nuns? Or they can arise from what is perceived to be a common heritage, spreading a sense of community identity across space and time. Thus it is that Americans feel there is nothing incongruous about referring to Washington as our first president, even though no living American was present for his administration, and most Americans have precious few ancestors who lived here during that time. Thus it is that an American living in Los Angeles can hear of something that happened in Springfield, Illinois, or Springfield, Massachusetts, and say, "Only here in America." Of course, membership in communities is never absolute. The same person could just as easily say, "We sure aren't like that here in California," or "here in L.A., thus asserting the epic of another community. But the more important a community is to us, the more power its stories have in forming our view of the world, and in shaping our own behavior. I don't think my children are the only ones who've heard prescriptive epic stories like this one. I don't care what other people's children do. In our family, Every community's epic includes shibboleth stories, stories that define what members do and do not do. No good Baptist would ever, just like a true American. And the stories that define a person's individual identity are often interpreted by the role that person plays within the community. "You make us all so proud of you, son. An outstanding role model for young... I just wish other young people would be more like you. I hope you're proud of the example you're setting for the other kids. Now everybody's going to think all us blacks, Rotarians, Jews, Americans are like you." Thus we not only are defined by the epic stories of the communities we belong to, but also help revise the community's epic stories by our behavior. If I were going into this in detail, I'd talk about the role of outsiders in shaping a community's epic, and also about negative epic, but this is an essay, not a book in itself. The second category of story that shapes human behavior so that we can live together is not perceived as being tied to a particular community. It is mythic. Those who believe in the story believe that it defines the way human beings behave. These stories are not really about how this character or that character behaved in a certain situation. They are about how people behave in such situations. All storytelling contains elements of the particular, the epic, and the mythic. Fiction and scripture are both uniquely suited to telling mythic tales, however, because by definition, fiction is not tied to particular people in the real world, and by definition, scripture is perceived by its believers to be the universal truth, rather than being merely and particularly true, the way history is usually received. That fiction and scripture are also inevitably epic, reflecting values and assumptions of the community out of which they arose, is true but not terribly important, for their audience believes mythic stories to be universal and, over time, comes to behave as if they were universal. But fiction is not all equally mythic. Some fiction is quite particular, tied to a time and place and even characters in the real world. Thus, historical fiction or contemporary realistic fiction with a strong sense of place can lead the reader to say, "Those people certainly are strange," rather than the more mythic response, "People certainly are strange," or the even more mythic response, "I never knew people were like that," or the ultimate mythic response, "Yes, that's how people are." It might seem then that fiction becomes more mythic as it is divorced from identifiable real-world patterns, but it is not really the disconnection from reality that makes fiction mythic. If that were so, our myths would all be of madmen. Rather, a story becomes more mythic as it connects to things that transcend reality. Tolkien's Middle-earth is so thoroughly created in The Lord of the Rings